let's head right to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave Frank from Cleveland. After that Bears game on Sunday, how can you give Sanders a grade with that offensive line they put out there? And if any of those guys are auditioning on that offensive line, I'd give them a F minus. They didn't show me nothing on that right side of the line. Give me your thoughts, brother. You and the family be safe, brother. I love you. I'll be in touch.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Sam Monson from the 33rd Team Coast to the Check the Mic podcast. Sam, the offensive line had one starter, Joel Bitonio. It wasn't a good offensive line when everybody's healthy, which will tell you how bad it was against the Bears. But more curious about your thoughts, what you've seen from Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, it's a rough offensive line. Shedeur Sanders, unfortunately, that's kind of his biggest weakness as a quarterback as well, is that he doesn't have a great relationship with helping an offensive line. You know, he's the type of quarterback that will hold onto the ball a little too long, that will try and extend plays back in the pocket and make the life of his offensive lineman a little bit more difficult than you would want. And, you know, that's sort of the opposite of what Dylan Gabriel was bringing to the table. But obviously what you gain by putting Shedeur Sanders back there is a guy who's willing to push the ball down the field and, you know, try and make some big plays to offset some of that. So, you know, this is the balancing act that they have right now, is you've got a quarterback who is going to be stressing the offensive line a bit, but he's going to attack deeper down the field, and he's brought an explosive element to this offense that wasn't there before. So, you know, right now, between the injuries in the offensive line, just the lack of talent in the wide receiver room, he doesn't have an awful lot of help around him, Shedeur Sanders. But he's also, his biggest weakness is not helping the picture either.
So take a look at this, and I know you've seen this. Browns offensive tackles registered season low 57% run block win rate against the Bears. Browns ran for 50 yards. 24 of them were the quarterback, Shedeur Sanders, which were scrambles. Lowest total since the 49 yards against the Bengals in the opener. We've talked since the beginning of the year. I know you thought this offensive line was old and not very good. How many of the problems with this offense are related to the offensive line and the wide receiver room, which is just as bad?
Yeah, I mean, it's all interdependent. You know, you can never sort of isolate any one of these units and take them away from everything else. It's all connected. The lack of receiving talent is making life difficult for a quarterback, and the quarterback is therefore holding onto the ball longer, and that's making the offensive line's job more difficult, and the whole thing is a sort of vicious circle. It's impossible to know, and that's the problem when you're evaluating young quarterbacks in a difficult situation. Is there's really no way of being able to tell, you know, how much of the struggles are down to the other things and how much of them are inherent with a guy like Shedeur Sanders. And that was a big question mark heading into the season for somebody like Drake May in New England. Terrible offensive line, terrible receiving core last year. And we knew that he would get better this year with those things upgraded, but how much better? And that's always the X factor question. So I think it's unquestionably not helping Shedeur Sanders right now, the offensive line, the receiving core that he's throwing to, with the exception of really the other rookies, Harold Fannin, the guys in the backfield. But we don't know how much. You know, if you suddenly took those away and gave him, you know, a top 10 offensive line, a top 10 receiving core, how much better would that make his play immediately just by flipping that switch? And that's why this is always more of an art form than a science.
When you look at Sanders, there's always, even in the Bears game, there was 3 or 4 throws where it's like, man, I haven't seen that in a long time from a Browns quarterback. Do you see that, or have I been looking at really bad quarterback play for a long time?
No, I think he's definitely flashed. Like, he's shown some impressive things. The problem he's dealing with is, you know, he's working from such a low starting point in terms of the building's opinion of him. You know, whatever other people thought about him, and some people thought he was a first-round draft pick and stuff, clearly the Browns didn't. You know, they passed on him. They passed on him a lot. They drafted a different quarterback ahead of him, and eventually in the 5th round, they just decided that the value was too good to pass up if it turns out that they're wrong and that Shedeur Sanders is better than they thought he was. But the problem is that means their initial impression of Shedeur Sanders is not particularly strong, and he doesn't have a lot of time, to win them around, to take them away from, say, the top quarterback or a quarterback at the top of next year's draft that they're presumably going to have a shot at with the multiple first round draft picks. So I think realistically, Shedeur is probably competing to show that he can be the primary backup for this team. Um, but he's all he can do is go out there and show those flashes of high end play, those explosive plays that you're right have been kind of absent from this team for a pretty long time now.